The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. The push to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill this year faced a major setback Wednesday after House Republicans gathered behind closed doors to discuss whether they would support a bill passed just last month in the Senate. During a 2-hour session, Speaker John Boehner urged his fellow Republicans to take action in a way that reflected the party's principles. Afterwards, he joined Majority Leader Eric Cantor and others in issuing a statement saying, quote, rather than take up the flawed legislation rushed through the Senate, House committees will continue their work on a step-by-step common-sense approach to fixing what has long been a broken system. As House Republicans met to discuss immigration reform, a flash mob of immigrants and their allies took over the House Visitors Center and broke out into the national anthem as they unfurled an American flag.
Wednesday, hundreds of Dreamers and their parents participated in an aspirational citizenship ceremony at a park near the Capitol. One of the speakers at the event was Congressmember Luis Gutierrez, Democrat of Illinois. He joins us now from the Cannon Rotunda at the Capitol. Congressmember Gutierrez is the chair of the Immigration Task Force of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, member of the bipartisan House Gang of Seven that's been working on a broad immigration reform bill. He has an upcoming tour planned in which he'll visit Republican congressional districts to build bipartisan support for immigration reform. Are reports of the immigration bill being dead exaggerated, Congressmember Gutierrez?
Well, you know, in Washington, D.C., it's kind of the favorite of journalists around here. They love, I guess they should use the funeral business or be morticians, because they love to kill everything. Of course, this movement is far from dead. It's alive, it's well. Look, it's a very broad, expansive, deep movement. I mean, when you get the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal editorial boards almost singing synonymously the praises of comprehensive immigration, when you have the AFL-CIO sitting down with the Chamber of Commerce and reaching an agreement, when you have the United Farm Workers and the growers across this country reaching an agreement, when you have evangelicals and very progressive on the religious front together, working together. Look, it's very broad, it's very deep, and we're going to be successful. So here's what I think. I think the Republican Party is just going to have to make a decision. I think that's really the quandary they find themselves, and I think that's really a reflection of yesterday's meeting. There are those who want to take the party forward. Congressman Paul Ryan says we should not have a two-tier society where we have a permanent underclass. He wants to end that permanent underclass. He wants to bring them out of the shadows into American citizenship. And then you have others who simply do not like immigrants. Look, you could put as many people as you want on the border. That border could be sealed and impenetrable. They still would not vote for comprehensive immigration reform or any reform. They just don't want it. To them, one immigrant is one immigrant too many, and they're never going to come around. So that's the quandary of the Republican Party. I think there are good, solid voices in the Republican Party that are going to, in the end, prevail on this issue. Lastly, there's something very unique about this moment, and that is, I've been here 20 years. There are more than 218 votes. That is, there is a majority in the House of Representatives for comprehensive immigration reform. That's never been there before. There are dozens of Republicans that are ready to join a couple of hundred Democrats to get this done. All Speaker Boehner has to do is actually allow democracy to flourish in the House of Representatives and allow us to vote. Lastly, let's not buy into this, the Senate bill, the Senate bill, the Senate bill. No one. The only one saying that we should adopt the Senate bill is Schumer, the senator from New York. Apart from Schumer, I think everybody else understands that you need to be respectful of a legislative process in the House of Representatives. So stop using that as an excuse. We are working on a bipartisan basis. We'll work with Paul Ryan. We'll work with Congressman Carter. We'll work with Congressman Johnson. We'll work with Congressman Diaz-Balart. We will work with them and others to formulate a bipartisan proposal, distinct, different, but conferenceable with the Senate version.
Well, Congressman Gutierrez, the proposals in the House, though, none of the separate portions of legislation that they presented include legislation that would provide a path to citizenship. And I think Raul Labrador, the congressman, Republican congressman, last night in the NewsHour said that he doesn't believe your estimate that there is a majority support for a pathway to citizenship exists in the House. Could you respond to both those issues?
Sure. Number one, let me just say this, then let's have a vote. Then if your position is, let's have a vote. The only way you're really going to answer this question is to allow a vote. Why is it? They say that they want a majority of the majority to be for something. In other words, 125 out of 435 members dictate the future of policy in the House of Representatives? I mean, that's a minority. That's 30%. Now 30% dictates the future of legislation in the House of Representatives. I think, look, the American public spoke clearly and unequivocally on November the 4th. The Republican Party has a decision to make. There are many. Former President Bush, his brother Jeb Bush, Karl Rove, you name them, they are ready and working and advancing the cause of comprehensive immigration reform. For whatever reason, I believe many of them believe that there should be a solution to our broken immigration system. Others simply want to take it off the table. Doesn't matter what the motivation is. The fact is they're looking for a solution. And the Republican Party, look, I want to be very, very clear. There is a demographic tsunami coming towards the Republican Party, and it's reflected. And George Bush in 2004 got over 40% of the Latino vote. The last election, the Republican nominee, Romney, barely got over 20% of the vote. And more Latinos are voting. Not only is the percentage going down, but the number of Latinos actually participating in the electoral system is increasing. They will know, look, do they want to be a party of provinces and counties and areas of the United States, or do they want to be a national party? That's a decision they're going to have to make as they move forward on this issue.
And you are supposedly, I understand, going on another one of your national tours on immigration reform, sure. And you're going into some of these Republican House districts in the coming months?
Look, I'm going to leave tomorrow, and we'll be going out, and it's cherry-picking season. I mean, I want to be with the workers, and I want to be with the actual producers, right? So we want to combine the workers with the actual farmers that are there and the growers to show America this is about economic security and vitality. And I want to show the nation, at least attempt to show the nation, you know something, that's hard, backbreaking work. Somebody's got to work in those fields every day. On Washington, we'll go out and meet with the growers in Washington State, and we'll see, and we'll be with with people who pick apples. And then next weekend, then I want to go to the NAACP. Let me tell you something. The Black Caucus and the black community in the United States has been stellar. It's been such a foundation for our immigration system. I want to go out there and continue to coordinate. Look, the movement is broad, the movement is very deep, and it will not be denied. You can delay this. You can delay it. I agree, you can delay, but you can't stop it. It is inevitable. 50,000 Latinos turn 18 every year. And I know the question of some of your viewers, how many of them are citizens? I'm only talking about the ones that are citizens. Look, this is growing. We're going to achieve it. And the Republican Party, in the end, all Boehner has to do is give us a vote. If he gives us a vote, there will be more than 218 votes. Of that, I am sure.
Congressmember Bob Goodlatte, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, spoke earlier this week about his party's reasons for opposing immigration reform passed by the Senate. He began by referencing the last immigration reform bill that passed in 1986 and was signed into law by President Reagan.
First of all, in 1986, they gave an easy pathway to citizenship to nearly 3 million people with the promise of greater enforcement, border enforcement, employer sanctions, other new things to prevent a repeat of illegal immigration. Well, obviously, that was never put into effect, not just by this president, but by all the interceding presidents as well. So this Senate bill now gives a legal status. It's a longer pathway to citizenship, but it gives a legal status almost immediately to maybe 11 million or more people, and then says we'll fix the border, we'll put in E-Verify, we'll put in an entry-exit visa system, we'll do the other interior enforcement things that we've all said we need to have. They don't do it until after they've given that legal status, and most people think that the legal status is what most people who are not lawfully present in the United States want anyway. So a repeat of 1986. I also think the special pathway to citizenship in the Senate bill, giving people who have entered the country illegally something that people who've come legally for decades and followed the rules and gone through and been the beneficiary of particular types of petitions where they get the status automatically just by virtue of having been here illegally and then legally for a period of time, is a bad precedent as well. And then finally, there's not any kind of significant interior enforcement. About 35 to 40% of the people who are here illegally entered the country legally on visitors visas, business visas, student visas, visa waivers, and simply overstayed. So the border itself, securing that is not enough.
So that's Republican Congressmember Bob Goodlatte, chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Republican Congressman Tom Cotton of Arkansas wrote a piece in today's Wall Street Journal headlined, "It's the House bill or nothing on immigration." He wrote, quote, "The House of Representatives will reject any proposal with the Senate bill's irreparably flawed structure, which is best described as legalization first, enforcement later, maybe. The best solution is to abandon the Senate bill's flawed framework and proceed with an enforcement first approach that assures Americans that the border is secure and immigration laws are being enforced." And then you've got that tweet that was just put out there, a Twitter message posted last night by Congressmember Tim Huelskamp of Kansas, who wrote, and he refers to Republicans as Rs, "Most House Rs agree with most Senate Rs, and Americans trusting Obama with border security is like trusting Bill Clinton with your daughter." So where is this headed, Congressmember Gutierrez? Yet you have George W. Bush supporting your position.
Sure. Look, I think Chairman Goodlatte is just wrong. They talk about the 1986 legislation, and here's what happened in 1986. It was an amnesty. Basically, 3 million people got green cards, and 5 years later could apply for American citizenship. In that sense, he's correct. But this thing about border enforcement and that they were going to, look, the only thing it has was employer sanctions. That is, you were going to sanction employers. And let me tell you what happened as soon as the bill was passed. Because there was no pathway for new workers to come and fill the economic vacuums that exist in our economy and exist in certain localities in the United States, because there was no way for new workers and new immigrants to come to America to fill that vacuum, they came undocumented to the United States in order to fill that stuff. But guess who were the first people to call? It was Republican members of Congress calling and saying, I don't have enough people to pick apples. I don't have enough people to pick grapes. I don't have enough people to work and toil in my factory. I don't have enough people in the meatpacking plants in my district. I need you to set aside. They were the ones calling on the Department of Labor. What we are doing, how can you say that this is not monumentally different when Democrats, who have never been for enforcement only, allow 700 miles of fences as they have in the Senate proposal, 20,000 more Border Patrol agents, and say, look, you can say that there's no enforcement in there. The fact is that they are militarizing the border between the United States and Mexico in order to reach an agreement to allow 11 million people to live in the United States and have some semblance of justice and fairness. Number one, and Mr. Goodlatte should understand that, and our proposals have always been about enforcement. What they are saying, look, they are using positions that have been completely discredited and discarded. In November 6th, it's almost as if in the House of Representatives, nothing happened November 6th. There wasn't an electoral demand for comprehensive immigration reform. Let me just reiterate. Mr. Goodlatte is an outlier, and so are the Republicans in the House of Representatives. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, AFL-CIO, Chamber of Commerce, the growers and the union representing the farm workers, the evangelicals and Presbyterians, Catholics and Mormons, all together, the movement is broad. Everybody is compromising. Everybody is sitting at a table and saying, what do we have to do to work together? The only ones that are in the Senate, compromise in the Senate. 14 Republicans, 54 Democrats get together, 68 of them. Everywhere there is compromise and there are people working together to solve the problem, except the House of Representatives. And in the end, they have to simply allow us a vote. Leave the rhetoric aside, allow us a vote, and we can fix our broken immigration system.
Congressman Gutierrez, just a few seconds we have left. You've been allied now on this issue with Paul Ryan, and you're close to him. Do you think that Paul Ryan would lead the charge in the House to be able to get some kind of a pathway to citizenship in the legislation that the House considers?
Number one, he believes in it. He has stated it, and I'm very, very proud of him that in spite of this very ugly rhetoric from some sectors of his party, he has stood up and consistently said we need a pathway to citizenship. And like Paul Ryan, there are dozens of other Democrats. Dozens of other Republicans in the House of Representatives that are ready to vote. Simply allow us to vote. Why are you afraid? If you don't believe that there are sufficient numbers of Democrats and Republicans to pass comprehensive immigration reform, then maybe you're right. No, you're saying it's your way or no way. Everyone else is compromising. Everyone else is compromising. The only place where people say it's the status quo and I don't want to fix this is in the House of Representatives, and it's in the Republican caucus of the House of Representatives. My view is allow democracy to flourish. Allow a vote. 218 people will vote more than 218 will vote for comprehensive immigration reform, and they know we have the votes.
We want to thank you very much, Congressmember Gutierrez, for joining us. Democratic Congressmember from Illinois, chair of the Immigration Task Force of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and member of the bipartisan House Gang of 7 that's been working on this broad immigration reform bill. He is planning this tour starting tomorrow, visiting Republican congressional districts to drum up support for immigration reform. This is Democracy Now! Stay with us. Song sung by Aretha Franklin. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, as NSA leaker Edward Snowden remains at a Moscow airport, Army whistleblower Bradley Manning is on trial, and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Today we look at the strange story of another man tied to the world of cyber activism, who faces over 100 years in prison. His name is Barrett Brown. He's an investigative reporter with ties to the hacking collective Anonymous. He has spent the past 300 days in jail and has been denied bail. He faces 17 charges, ranging from threatening an FBI agent to credit card fraud, for posting a link online to a document that contains stolen credit card data. But according to his supporters, Brown is being unfairly targeted for daring to investigate the highly secretive world of private intelligence and military contractors.
Before Brown's path crossed with the FBI, he frequently contributed to Vanity Fair, The Huffington Post, The Guardian, and other news outlets. In 2009, Brown created Project PM, which was, quote, dedicated to investigating private government contractors working in the secretive fields of cybersecurity, intelligence, and surveillance. He was particularly interested in the documents leaked by WikiLeaks and Anonymous. In the documentary We Are Legion, Barrett Brown explains the importance of information obtained by hackers.
Some of the most important things that have had the most far-reaching influence and have been the most important in terms of what's been discovered, not just by Anonymous, but by the media in the aftermath, is a result of hacking. That information can't be obtained by the traditional journalistic process, or it can't be obtained or won't be obtained by a congressional committee or a federal oversight committee. For the most part, that information has to be obtained by hackers.
In 2011, the group Anonymous hacked into the computer system of the private security firm H.B. Gary Federal and disclosed thousands of internal emails. Barrett Brown has not been accused of being involved in the hack, but he did read and analyze the documents, eventually crowdsourcing the effort through Project PM. One of the first things he discovered was a plan to tarnish the reputations of WikiLeaks and sympathetic journalist Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian. Brown similarly analyzed and wrote about the millions of internal company emails for Stratfor Global Intelligence that were leaked on Christmas Eve 2011. Shortly thereafter, the FBI acquired a warrant for Brown's laptop and authority to seize any information from his communications, or in journalism parlance, his sources. In September 2012, a troop of armed agents surged into Brown's apartment in Dallas, Texas, and handcuffed him face down on the floor. He's been in prison ever since.
Well, for more, we're joined by Peter Ludlow, professor of philosophy at Northwestern University. He's written extensively on hacktivist actions against private intelligence firms and the surveillance state. His recent article for The Nation is called The Strange Case of Barrett Brown. Peter Ludlow, welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you very much.
Talk to us about Barrett Brown, the importance of his case, given all the others that we've been dealing with on this show now for many years.
Well, yeah, it's important for two reasons. First of all, it's showing that to some extent all of us could be targets, because the principal reasons that they're going after him with is this sort of claim that he was involved in credit card fraud or something like that. I mean, that's completely fallacious. I mean, in effect, what he did was take a link from a chat room and copied that link and pasted it into the chat room for Project PM. That is, he took a link that was broadcast widely on the internet, and it was a link to the Stratfor hack information, and he just brought it to the attention of the editorial board of Project PM. And because there were, for whatever reason, unencrypted credit card numbers and validation codes among those 5 million other emails, the government is claiming that he was engaged in credit card fraud. They're claiming that Project PM was a criminal enterprise. And so basically, for our interest, why this is interesting to us is basically it makes it dangerous to even link to something or to share a link with someone. Go ahead. Yeah,
well,
please.
One of the things that you raise is in some of your writings on this is the incestuous relationship between the Justice Department, the government, and these private firms that are being now targeted by cyber activists. And could you talk about that as well?
Well, sure. A lot of these private intelligence companies are started by ex-CIA, NSA people. Some people come from those agencies and rotate back into the government. I mean, you even see with the case of Snowden, he was actually a contractor for a private intelligence company, Booz Allen. And, I mean, people think about the NSA, FBI, CIA, and they think of those are the people that are doing the surveillance of you and doing this intelligence work. But really, if you look at how much the United States spends on intelligence, 70% of that is actually going to these private intelligence contractors. So, you know, if you add up CIA, NSA, FBI, that's just a tip of the iceberg. So there's all this sort of spook stuff going on in the private realm. And yeah, right, a lot of it is very incestuous, is a revolving door, and no one's investigating it or even talking about it as far as I can tell.
Let's go to Barrett Brown in his own words. In March 2012, Democracy Now! Spoke with Barrett soon after his house was raided.
On March 5th, I received a tip that I was about to be raided by the FBI. I left my apartment here in Dallas and went to my mom's residence here in the same city. Next morning, 3 FBI agents arrived at my mom's place. I went out and talked to them. They said my apartment had just been raided. The door was damaged. They would take care of that. And that they also asked me if I had any laptops with me that I wanted to give them. I said no. A few hours later, the FBI returned to my mom's house with another warrant, this time for her house, and detained the both of us for 3 hours while they searched the residence. They found several laptops I had stashed somewhere in the house and left the search warrants and left another one in my apartment, which I got when I came back here the next day or so. The warrants themselves refer to the information that they're seeking as regarding Anonymous, of course, a few other things of that nature, and also 2 companies, HP Gary and In-Game Systems. Both of these are intelligence contracting companies that Anonymous had a run-in with in February of 2011, during which a number of emails were taken from HP Gary in particular, which themselves revealed a number of conspiracies being perpetuated by those companies in conjunction with the Justice Department and several other institutions, including Bank of America, against WikiLeaks and against several journalists. The time since, I've spent a lot of time going over those emails, researching them, conducting other research, and otherwise trying to expose a number of things that have been discovered by virtue of those emails from HP Gary having been taken. I sincerely believe that my activities on that front have contributed to me being raided the other day and will no doubt contribute to any further action that the FBI decides to take. I would just also note the Justice Department itself is very much intertwined with this issue and has been for a while, and in no way can conduct a fair investigation against me based on what I've revealed, what I've helped to sort of emphasize about them.
That was Barrett Brown in his own words just after the raid. Peter Ludlow, talk about what he had released. Talk about what he got from H.B. Gary and how this links to Glenn Greenwald.
Sure. Well, what they uncovered was, I mean, it's actually a little bit subtle, right? It's because it begins with the Bank of America being concerned that WikiLeaks had information on it. Bank of America goes to the United States Department of Justice. The Department of Justice leads them to Hunton & Williams, the big law fix-it firm in the D.C. area, who in turn hooks them up with a group of private intelligence contractors that went under the umbrella Team Themis. And Team Themis had a number of proposals and projects that were exposed in all of this. They included running kind of a PSYOPs operation against the Chamber Watch, which is a group that sort of monitors the Chamber of Commerce, and it was an attempt to undermine it, and Glenn Greenwald and other individuals. And I mean, there were many, many plans that they had, many, many things, but some of the documents released showed that they were saying they were going to create fake documents, leak them to Greenwald, and then when Greenwald eventually released them, they would expose it as a fraud and attempt to undermine him in that way. And they had a similar plan for Chamber Watch as well.
And their concern with Greenwald was that he was giving that his defense of WikiLeaks was giving legitimacy to WikiLeaks that it didn't deserve.
That was the concern, yeah. And they actually said in there, well, he's just a professional journalist and he'll fold under pressure immediately. I mean, apparently they were wrong about that, so yeah.
There were also emails found where these private security firms were assessing the damage that Jeremy Scahill's books had done to Blackwater.
Well, actually, I ran across that in the Stratfor leaks, and that was kind of interesting because they were monitoring this because they were concerned that Blackwater was going to get into the private intelligence business themselves, and they were commenting on Scahill. They go, "Wow, yeah, Scahill's. You know, I don't care much for his politics, but he's really got these guys figured out." Yeah, so that was a little compliment for Scahill, I think. Yeah.
But the amazing thing in all of this is the degree to which these private security firms are engaging in attempts to influence what's going on in the public debate on intelligence.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the most crazy things in the whole thing was when Coca-Cola approached Stratfor, and they were concerned concerned about PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And why, I'm not entirely sure, but one of the people in Stratford said, well, the FBI has a classified file on PETA. I'll see if I can get it for you. Now, that little story sums up a lot of stuff that's wrong about this. First of all, why is Coca-Cola going to a private intelligence company for this? Why did the private intelligence company feel that they had immediate access to a classified file by the FBI? And why did the FBI have a classified file to begin with? I mean, but to me, the creepiest part of that very creepy little story is the fact that the guy at Stratford felt that he had access to this classified file by the FBI. And the Barrett Brown case revealed something like this as well. It's almost like the FBI has become just another private security firm, that it's become like a private cop for these companies, as it were. And I mean, that's part because of the revolving door. That's part because they get pressed into service for companies that want inside information on activist organizations like PETA.
We're going to break and then come back to this conversation. We're talking to Peter Ludlow, professor of philosophy at Northwestern University, has written extensively on hacktivist actions against private intelligence firms. The piece he most recently wrote is for The Nation, and it's called The Strange Case of Barrett Brown. When we come back, I want to ask you how it's possible he faces 100 years in prison. It makes us think about Aaron Swartz. He didn't face anything like that, but he faced decades in prison. He ultimately committed suicide before prosecution. Stay with us. That's Graham Nash. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Peter Ludlow is our guest, a professor of philosophy at Northwestern University, has been tracking the case of Barrett Brown and wrote a Nation piece about him, The Strange Case of Barrett Brown. So the FBI raids his home, and he ultimately is arrested. He faces 100 years in prison.
Yeah, if you add up all the charges, and if he serves them sequentially, it'll be 105 years in prison. Yeah, that's right.
And the decision for no bail?
That's a mystery to me.
He's been in jail now for 300
days. Yeah, over 300 days. No bail. For a while, they had frozen his the contributions to his legal fund too.
Well, that sounds like WikiLeaks, meaning that's what happened to WikiLeaks. They had all these different corporations like PayPal refuse to allow money to go.
Yeah, right.
Let's go to an interview Barrett Brown did with NBC's Michael Isikoff, serving as a spokesperson for Anonymous.
Our people break laws, just like all people break laws. When we break laws, we do so in the service of civil disobedience. We do so ethically. We do it against targets who have asked for it.
You go against targets that have asked for it?
Yes.
What do you mean?
Targets who have engaged in a manner that is either unethical and contrary to the the values of this age, information freedom, and sometimes just plain common sense. In the case of them going after journalists, going after WikiLeaks in the way that they were planning to do so.
But you can attack websites.
Yes, we can attack websites. We can DDoS them. We can sometimes hack them. We can sometimes take over the websites themselves, put messages up, as we did today with Westboro, and as we did with the company HB Gary and other federal contractors during that attack.
You can
take it over to face
the websites of government contractors
and governments, of course. In Tunisia and in Libya, Algeria, and Egypt, and Iran, we either took down or replaced government websites. We replaced them with messages from us to the people of those nations explaining what we're doing and why, and what we'll provide if they choose to revolt.
Are you worried you're going to get prosecuted?
I'm not worried about it, but I am going to get prosecuted at some point, yes.
Because you're involved in hacking activities.
Because they can do whatever they want to anyone they want.
But you're not worried?
No, because, again, like I said, I'm well protected right now.
What do you mean well protected?
I've got a lot of lawyers, and I've got a lot of higher up people. I've got people I talk to who support us. And if they come after me, they're going to find that they're not going to like everything they see.
That's Barrett Brown talking to NBC's Michael Isikoff. Well, the fact is, Barrett Brown has been in prison now for 300 days, and he faces decades in prison. Can you explain, that's when he was an anonymous spokesperson, what Anonymous is, and then also talk about the groups he exposed, like Endgame and others, though he wasn't the only one to do that?
Sure. I have to think he was a little bit optimistic there in his claims about how he was all lawyered up there. But he was related to Anonymous, which is, it's not a group per se. You know, you or I could claim to be members of Anonymous. It's more like a flag that you fly if you choose to. And so there was a loosely knit group of hacktivists. Some of them were intersecting. They carried out hacks against, as he says, against various private intelligence contractors and other kinds of targets. He's quite right that during the Arab Spring and the Tunisian uprising and so forth, members of Anonymous did a lot of work in keeping protesters online and in minimizing the effectiveness of the governments in the Middle East in that time. And then you asked about things like Endgame systems, for example. Yeah, Endgame is a very interesting thing. I mean, Endgame is this kind of very secretive private intelligence company. And you even see in the HB Gary hack, you see these messages where someone from Endgame says in an email, "We don't ever want to see our name in a press release from you guys." And what makes it particularly interesting is if you read the search warrant that's issued to Barrett when he's busted, it says, well, we're looking for stuff related to HB Gary and Endgame Systems. You're like, why Endgame Systems? And this is a corporation that's involved